Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TEACHERCAST Educational Network. My name is Jeff Bradbury.
And I'm Nick Amaral.
And welcome to Ask the Tech Coach, episode number 25. Today we're going to be talking all about what makes a good faculty or department meeting presentation, and we have some great stories to share today. Before we get into all of the action today, there's of course several great ways to be a part of this and all of our shows. You can reach out to us at askthetechcoach.com and over on Twitter at Ask the Tech Coach, where you can ask us anything about instructional technology, how do I, what do I, where do I, and find out all the great answers to your tech coaching needs over at askthetechcoach.com. Nick, how are you today?
Doing good, Jeff. Just coordinating some stuff, and now with some of the holidays coming up and Thanksgiving, just busy and waiting for that time off to just catch back up and recuperate.
It is that time of year where teachers get busy, and the busy teachers get even busier. We, of course, are getting colder. It is the middle of November, and we had some great reflections and reactions from last week's episode 24, on how to provide direction when maybe there isn't a lot of direction in your school district. Nick, I was surprised that there were so many people that were writing. One of the questions that we had was actually a pretty interesting one here, Nick. Let me throw it at you. Basically, we had a tech coach write us, what happens if you're trying to be a leader in your district, but you really find yourself actually banging your head against the wall? Like, what do you do if you're trying to be that leader, but you realize that maybe no one's listening to you?
Staying calm. That's the first one, right? And not saying things that you are going to regret. But I think using that opportunity to to speak to some of your admin and your uppers and see if maybe there's a way that you can take the lead on some type of initiative or something, and find an opportunity to invite the teachers in to maybe plan out what the next task or goal is. I will say, one thing that connects to this that we've been doing really well in my district is using our tech committee, which is comprised of admin and teachers, as sort of that cohort to help lead us in directions. So when things start to falter, we can always go back to that group to help guide us in a direction.
I think that's a great idea. So many school districts have these tech groups, and again, it's not IT, but it's EdT,
right?
And it kind of incorporates everything that's going on. I talk about this a lot in my district. I kind of liken my position to Jonah Hill in Moneyball. Have you seen Moneyball?
Great movie.
It's a fantastic movie. Aaron Sorkin, I believe. But I always go back to that scene where he is being introduced to the scouts, and he's sitting there at the table, and his job is to be quiet. His job is not to say anything. And Brad Pitt starts talking about scouting and finding the right players. And, of course, everybody is sitting there against Brad Pitt. And Brad Pitt starts to talk about the fact that we're trying to find Moneyball and we're trying to find ways to win and get runs and stuff like that. And basically he looks over at Jonah Hill, snaps his finger and says, "What's the right answer?" And Jonah Hill says something, right? He talks about the numbers or the players or, whatever the situation was. But I often look at my position, and our position, I should say, as that, right? Like, your job is to lead when they need you to lead, right? Like Jonah Hill cannot walk into that meeting and say, "Here's the right way," because the scouts are going to look at him and go, "Who are you?" And the GM is certainly going to look at him and go, "Who are you? You were here for 5 seconds." But after all, they hired Jonah Hill because he has a plan, he has a system, he's got the background, he knows what's going on, and he was pretty darn good at selling the system that in the end was successful, Nick.
Yeah, and it's that, it's that liaison role, right? Like balancing both groups or multiple groups that you have in your school, and I definitely feel it as that. It's like, oh, we're bringing in a new tool. Hey, Jeff, Nick, tell us where we go from here. What should we start to think about? How do we implement this in classrooms? Tell us the teacher side of things. So I think that that's when the magic happens. That's when, we start to lead and take advantage of our opportunity to help guide a district or our districts where they need to go.
And Nick, I'm just thinking here, but maybe we can do a Moneyball episode one day, because I'm now thinking about that scene where Brad Pitt looks at Jonah Hill and says, "Look, you need to go on the road with this team. I can't get close to the players because I'm the one that has to manage and fire, hire, and I can't be their friend, but you get a chance to go and be their friend and travel with them and see what they're like and learn about them. And that really is that tech coach role, isn't it?
Yeah, I like that comparison because that's definitely it. It's, oh, we're not part of this group, or I'm not a teacher in the classroom, but you're in there. You're spending time with the teachers in the room, and you're getting to know them personally. So, what can you do to help us?
Now, you know where other places are that you can go out and meet and mingle with many teachers, Nick?
Where's that, Jeff?
Well, this past weekend, it was crazy, Nick. I got to tell you, I happened to be at the New Jersey Educators Association, the NJEA's annual teacher convention. 20,000 almost teachers get together in Atlantic City, and it's amazing, right? And for the sixth year, I think maybe it's my fifth year. I think it's my fifth year, right? I had my TEACHERCAST booth down there, and we did literally every hour was a session. We did a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock, up until 4 o'clock. It was back-to-back nonstop sessions. We had a lot of people showing up, and we did everything from our Google presentations to our animation to how to do WordPress. It was a blast. We had so much fun. We had a lot of people there. And then the cool part, Nick, is that wasn't enough, right? That wasn't enough presenting and tech coaching and everything. Friday, I got up. I did a 9 o'clock session at the convention in Atlantic City, got in my car, drove almost 3 hours to Newark, hopped in an airplane, flew all the way to Seattle, to where this past weekend there was an ISTE conference, a mini ISTE conference, all about creativity out in Seattle by the water. It was amazing. We had about 200 teachers sign up and show up, and it was a lot of stuff, and I got a chance to present on podcasting. I did 2 sessions on how to give a podcast. It was our TEACHERCAST podcasting workshop, and I got a chance to meet some amazing teachers from around the world, and I want to say thank you to not only the NJEA, but also ISTE and everybody out there who we got a chance to meet and work with. There's a lot of great stuff happening, and I got to tell you, Nick, doing all those presentations, it's tiring. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, and I mean, just listening to that, going from the NJA and to the ISTE conference and listening to your day. I mean, I know you mentioned to me previously, just nonstop on the hour, every hour, just different presentation, different workshop that you're hosting. So it's fun. And I think that's one thing people always think, and I always enjoy going to conferences, but especially when you're presenting and you're leading a lot of sessions, it's a full day of work.
It certainly is. And that really brings us up to our tech coach tip of the week. Nick, what is our tech coach tip of the week?
Yeah, so the idea is just going to flow with this, which is, when you're planning your conference or your school presentations, is just to rely on yourself to do whatever it is that you need to do to get done. Don't rely on the technology. Don't rely on anyone else, because you don't know what's going to falter or who's going to falter. So just make sure everything's planned out well.
And that's a great tip. And let's kind of dive into that. Basically, you guys out there, I'm sure you guys are shaking your head. You've been to a situation where you've gone to a conference, you've gone to someplace, and you've either seen or you have been the presenter when something goes wrong. Something isn't there, something isn't right, and you're sitting there with a couple hundred people in front of you, and you have to improvise. You have to make your presentation memorable, and that could be to a bunch of strangers, that could be to a bunch of administrators, heck, that could even be during an observation. What happens if someone's sitting there grading you and stuff just goes wrong? So today, Nick, we're going to be talking about the 3 things that make a memorable presentation. 3 things, perhaps, that you should keep in mind as you're going through the process of creating, planning, organizing, and giving professional development to people. Nick, what is the first thing that we need to be thinking about to have a memorable presentation?
Yeah, so the first idea is just being organized, well prepared, and having everything well thought out.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you from experience in this past weekend, you need to be organized, right? Many of the sessions we do at the NJEA convention are things that I do in school, or I've done at ed camps, or I've done YouTube videos on. But when you're at a place like a convention, you don't know. You might have 2 people show up. You might have 30 people. You might have a sellout. But unlike being in a PD session at school or something like doing a YouTube channel, not everybody has their laptops ready for them, right? Because they're shopping around the convention and they happen to sit in front of you, right? So you have to be prepared for an audience that has devices. You got to be prepared for an audience that doesn't have devices, and you got to be prepared for an audience that knows everything about the topic and an audience that knows nothing about the topic, right? So well organized, well prepared. Now, Nick, when we say well thought out, what do we really mean by that?
I think it's just making sure that, you have everything as far as the plan, for your original plan planned out, that you have everything organized that way, but you also are thinking about what could go wrong or what are possible questions that can come up. So you always have then that plan B that you can fall back on.
Oh, absolutely. Again, if things don't work out, always have a backup plan. And that comes before you even leave your room, your home, your office, your whatever. Always, and I'm going to say this on our podcast here, Nick, because it makes you laugh every time. I know it makes you laugh, Nick. Always check your dongles.
Absolutely. That's it.
Always
and make sure that they work, right?
And make sure that they work, right? Like if you're going out there, and sometimes you can ask, right? Like, does your projector in the room have HDMI? Does it have a VGA adapter? Can I AirPlay into something? Like, what do I need here? So always check your dongles. And I got to say, Nick, never rely on technology. Like always be ready for something. I've been in situations where I had to, at the last minute, pull internet off my phone just because it worked. Right. And I always say this for presentations. Yes, Google Slides are great. But if that's all you have and there's no internet, then you might not have anything. So I always download them into PowerPoint or Keynote or SlideShare. There's many things that you can do when you're preparing for these things, because you never know, especially, again, going back to conventions, you're in a room with 20,000 people. What if there's no Wi-Fi? What if the Wi-Fi is weak where you are? What if there's 20,000 people all pulling from the same Wi-Fi? What do you do there, right? So I always say never rely on technology and be prepared to lecture. Nick, have you ever gotten into a situation where you're all set to do something and you go, oh man, those iPads don't have the application process that I need. What do you do now?
Right. Or teachers ask you a question, right? And then that question goes to something else and it's, well, show me this and talk to me about this. And the next thing you know, you're just kind of start lecturing, right? Even though maybe you had all these ideas planned out. So you can't be afraid that you say to yourself, man, I really don't want to lecture, but if it comes up, it comes up, and you sort of have to roll with it. So that kind of goes with the whole idea of having that thought out plan I always thought about that in the classroom when I'm designing my lessons. What are questions that will come up or can come up, and what are issues that might arise? And I think one of the things we have, Jeff, that we are also doing as a giveaway was one of our workshop planning guides, templates, right? So, a way to, the same way teachers design their lesson plans, to design your workshop. So one of the other things I know we talked about was also knowing your audience, right? Like making sure who you're gearing it to, that the apps or the tools or the pedagogy, whatever it is that you end up talking about, is relatable, that they can also make a connection to it, and it's something that they're going to be able to be intrigued by. And
that's something that you can't always have. Again, I flew to Seattle to see 200 of my closest friends that I've never met. I have no idea. I had no idea what to expect, what they had, what they didn't have. I might have said, all right, we're all going to create a podcast. And they go, nope. So what do you do? Right? You got to riff a little bit. So number one here, guys, be organized, right? Be prepared, be well thought out. And when things go wrong, be professional, right? So always have that plan in mind. Now, Nick, the second thing I think is what?
Making sure that you're incorporating the audience. So audience participation, some interaction.
Yeah, and this kind of goes along with the idea of be memorable, right? Like, especially at a convention, there are people that are going to walk around all the time, right? Even at a convention or an ed camp, and sometimes at a school district, you have the rule of 2 feet. And I don't mind if anybody gets up and leaves me, but if I have the audience up and moving or up and running, that's essential, right? You do it through humor, do it through a skit, do it through some kind of something, right? Keep the audience awake. Keep them busy, right? Basically, what do we call that, Nick? That's classroom management 101.
Absolutely. I love station rotations or little mini breakouts, if you will, working with teachers. So that's just something, because I always hear from teachers, we want time to collaborate. We want time to collaborate. Well, in my workshop, I always love to build in that collaborative time. I do things where I call them jam sessions. So after I do sort of this collaborative hands-on experience with them, or my mini lecture, if you will, they break out and they have to work with a partner or a group, and they have to create or do something with what they just learned.
Now, the other thing in there is not to make wacky looking slides, right? Like you always have to have that idea between, is it a slide with a picture? Is it a slide with 1,000 words? You know, many of the things that I do with my TeacherCast University sessions are made for online learning, but I also stand in front of them. So you kind of have that balance between how much content is on a slide. I think we can all agree, though, in 2019, are we past the idea of doing cat videos in our presentations, Nick? Is that, should we be thinking about something different these days?
I do. I think we're past that. You know, I know that was an intriguing way to open workshops and presentations, right? Like, let me start with the funny video. The cat video was a winner.
Right. Let me try the iMovie trailer.
Yeah, there you go. So now it's about, you know, doing something new, and just, you know, gathering that intrigue in the workshop, being innovative, you know, and being creative and getting them to think outside the box.
Well, you said innovative, and really I think what it comes down to is know when to be innovative, but also know when to leave innovation behind. It's okay to talk about podcasting, for instance, and just give a story. Give a lecture. You don't need to make up, again, an iMovie trailer of podcasting equipment. And you don't need to do that stuff if you can command people's attention, which we all can because we're all teachers, right? Like, never forget, number one, you are a professional public speaker, right? And use all those tools, right? I always say, this is kind of one of those weird things. I always say I don't believe in adults and I don't believe in children. I believe in taller and smaller humans. The tricks that I pull on 4th graders, I try to pull on 34-year-olds. The tricks I pull on 12th graders, I try to pull on 60-year-olds. They're all the same kind of stuff. So, you know, try to be innovative, but try not to be over innovative, especially if it's not really your thing. If you're not one of those people to stand up and command a room and you're kind of timid about presenting, be yourself, right? But keep the audience in mind, keep them going. You never want to be that guy that's giving a lecture and you happen to walk around the room, turn around and you see everybody over their shoulder, they've got their Gmails open. Do something to be memorable with it. And of course, that brings us to our third point here, which is provide something that your audience can put into use the very next day. Nick, what do we mean by that? Providing something that a teacher can use tomorrow.
Yeah, I always just, you know, I liken this to the idea that get them creating, give them an opportunity to do something with the knowledge or the information that you set forth, that you presented to them. So that could be a template, which make for great takeaways. You know, if I'm talking about digital playlists, maybe I've created one as an example. Jeff, just the other day we were talking, I mentioned to you that I'm working with science on taking the digital playlist concept to RSTs, the research simulation tasks that science has to do, which is nothing more than really just personalized playlists. So I created one as a demo. I sent it to the teachers during the workshop. They were able to use that. That becomes a takeaway and a model for them. And then at the end of the workshop, I gave them an opportunity to start creating their next one.
I think that is a pretty cool idea that also keeps everybody in the presentation alert and ready to go and totally active, right? And obviously, in order to do that, Nick, you got to be well organized and well prepared and well thought. Hey, good job, Nick.
Good job. Thank you. And that's it, right? I mean, look, I went into it with what do I want them to do? How do I open? What do I talk about? But what do they need? And that was a couple things. I knew the audience going in. I knew what department. I knew what they were working on. Was I innovative? Maybe a little bit with the idea of if they weren't comfortable with digital playlists. But guess what? It really was like you said. I'd left the innovation behind, and it came really back to the pedagogy and the teaching of personalized learning. So it wasn't anything too crazy.
You know, and we always say at the end of this, come up with a memorable way, right? Like, and this kind of goes back to what we did this weekend with the podcasting workshop, right, Nick? Every conversation you have with somebody, whether it be one-on-one, one with a group, whatever, it's a lesson plan. Right? What's your intro? What's the body? What's your closing? Every phone call you do is a lesson plan. Every podcast we make here is a lesson plan. Like, what's the intro? How do we get into the topic? How do we do the topic? How do we get out of the topic? I always say at the end, try not to have a Q&A because those are dicey. Have a roundtable discussion, right? Like if you say, so does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
You know you're going to hear crickets or you're going to hear the closing of laptops.
Absolutely.
So, but if you throw a question out to them and let people kind of throw the questions around, now you're creating dialogue. Right. And so I would rather turn the tables a little bit, and I would rather ask the audience some questions. This is usually where you get off the podium and you go walking through the audience. You know, you kind of do that kind of I call it the Jerry Springer. And so I always say end with a discussion, not with Q&A.
Yeah, and I like that. You know, I think the round table, that for me is just a comfort area, you know, coming from the English classroom at the high school level. That's that. I love that as just, you know, let me throw out some questions. Plus, that's a great time for you as the presenter, us as the, you know, the tech coach, to gather feedback and find out, you know, so what are your thoughts about this tool? Do you like it? Do you not like it? You know, just get some information. I'll tell you what else I like. I like in that kind of round table way is just getting the teachers brainstorming. And I think that's an idea that also does is, you know, hey, now that we've talked about this and I've showed you some examples, why don't you guys brainstorm together as a group? Tell me, how could you implement this tool, this idea in your department? And then they break out and you give them 5 minutes to think about it, come back, recap those ideas, you know, and that's a great way to end.
It is a fantastic way to end. So 3 things that are going to help you guys become better presenters and creating a more memorable presentation here. Number 1, be well organized, prepared, and have a well thought out plan. Number 2, keep your audience participation in mind at all time. You want your audience to leave going, wow, did you see that? I can't wait to see that presenter again. And then number 3, provide something that they can put into work the next day. Now, Nick, we did something similar to that this past week at the conventions. Every single person who came in was able to sign up for our newsletter. And after every newsletter, I automatically sent them out a, hey, thank you for being here. Here's a free Google template. Something that they can remember me by, stick with the newsletter, and have it all out there. Now, I don't know if tech coaches and stuff do email marketing the same way that people do at conferences, but you get the idea here. So we want to hear from you guys. You can always find us over on www.askthetechcoach.com. Find us on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach. And if you'd like to be on our show, we're putting together our November roundtable show. It's going to be recorded, I believe it's going to be recorded, Nick, the week before Thanksgiving. So that way it comes out the week after Thanksgiving. So it's only going to be recorded in 2 weeks here. Find us, teachercast.net/voicemail, or email us over at feedback@teachercast.net. We would love to have you. And Nick, we've got a few tech coaches already that are signed up for November. So we got like 1 or 2 more spots to fill. So if you guys are out there and interested, find us on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach. Now, Nick, with all of this going on here and us thinking about what it takes to really dive into this whole tech coach profession, what are we going to be talking about on next week's episode?
Yeah, so our next topic is really taking what we just did now, but now how does that lead into your own teaching and coaching style? So how to find your teaching or coaching style. How do you feel comfortable teaching adults versus children, especially if you've come from the classroom and you're moving into this role? How to navigate through, you know, admin and the association, how to be that liaison between the two, and how not to get disturbed when things get awkward in the workshop.
So look for that episode dropping on November 19th, how to find your teaching or tech coaching style for your district. And again, I want to say thank you guys for joining us on this journey. 25 episodes. Nick and I have been putting this stuff together. Our mastermind is doing amazing things this month. And of course, we're going to be starting up our second cohort of our mastermind only in January, just a few short weeks away after the holidays here. Nick, what are you looking forward to as we go through our second marking period? What's on the horizon for everything happening with Nick and on your website?
Yeah, so, you know, I'm just continuing with a lot of online PD stuff. You know, I recently started releasing monthly PD challenges, a new idea that I started doing that hit on district goals. So we're working on the idea of interdisciplinary learning. So I just wanted to try something new and fun that also incorporated a couple different steps where teachers had to gain some background knowledge and stuff. And right now going over well. So you can catch me on Twitter at @namaral.edu or follow my blog, edtechforay.wordpress.com.
And of course, there's a lot of great things happening over here in the TeacherCast Educational Network. Mark your calendars. The afternoon, I believe it is 8 o'clock on December the 13th. Nick and I are going to be co-hosting a very special episode of Ed Chat Interactive, which I believe is edchatinteractive.com, Nick. But we're going to be talking all about a topic that we did a few podcasts ago on what do you do if your teachers and students just don't get it. So we're going to be talking about that on December 13th. It's a Thursday night. I'm looking forward to that. EdChat Interactives are really, really cool. You can come in, you can join the conversations, you can ask questions, you can participate, you can lead group sessions. It is a very fast-paced hour. EdChat Interactive. Join Nick and I on December the 13th. We're looking forward to being there. And of course, there's other great things. Nick, on TeacherCast, we just did a show featuring Hamilton the musical. It was pretty darn good. You can check that out over on the TeacherCast podcast over on teachercast.net. We want to know how you guys are doing. Find us on Twitter at AskTheTechCoach. Feel free to reach out, ask us anything about one of our episodes, or reach out to us on anything that's happening with you guys as a tech coach. We want to hear from you guys. We want to help build our PLN here as we go through here. And, of course, you can check us out over at teachercast.net/voicemail and leave us your questions that way. And on behalf of everybody here in the TeacherCast Educational Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury.
And I'm Nick Amaral.
Reminding you to keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.